Before history had a name. Before kings wore crowns. Before words were written down. Humanity stood at the edge of something unknown. For tens of thousands of years, humans lived the same way. They hunted. They gathered. They moved with the seasons. Nothing lasted long enough to be remembered. No cities. No laws. No stories carved into stone. Then, in one fragile stretch of land, everything changed forever. Between two restless rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, civilization was born. This land was called Mesopotamia. The land between rivers. A place both generous and cruel. The rivers gave life, but they also destroyed without warning. Floods came suddenly, washing away homes and crops. Yet when the waters retreated, they left behind soil so fertile it seemed almost magical. Over time, humans learned a dangerous lesson: if they could control the water, they could control their future. They dug canals. They built irrigation systems. Seeds turned into harvests. Harvests turned into surplus. And surplus changed everything. For the first time in human history, people did not need to wander. They stayed. They built homes that lasted more than a season. Villages grew larger. Fields stretched farther. Children were born into places that already had names. Humanity had taken its first step toward permanence. Around 4000 BCE, something unprecedented emerged from the dust and mud: civilization. The Sumerians rose from the plains, not as conquerors, but as builders. They constructed the world's first true cities: Uruk, Lagash, places unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Uruk alone became a giant of the ancient world, its streets crowded with tens of thousands of people. From above, its massive temple towers, known as ziggurats, dominated the horizon like artificial mountains. These were not just cities. They were living experiments in human society. Inside their walls, life was loud, crowded, and fragile. Houses of mud brick lined narrow streets. Markets overflowed with grain, pottery, and textiles. Traders arrived from distant lands, bringing metals, stones, and ideas. Mesopotamia had little of its own, so it learned to connect with the world. Trade routes stretched outward like veins, carrying culture along with goods. But growth came with chaos. As cities expanded, memory failed. Who owed what? Who owned which land? How much grain was stored? Spoken words were no longer enough. And so, in one of the most important moments in human history, writing was born. The Sumerians pressed wedge-shaped symbols into wet clay, creating cuneiform. At first, it was nothing more than accounting. Numbers. Lists. Transactions. But slowly, those marks began to speak. They recorded prayers to the gods, stories of heroes, medical knowledge, and fears of the afterlife. For the first time, human thoughts could survive death. History had found its voice. With writing came power. Kings ruled cities, claiming authority from the gods themselves. Priests interpreted divine will. And laws began to shape daily life. The most famous of these laws came centuries later, carved into stone by King Hammurabi of Babylon. His code declared that order must replace chaos, that crime must have consequence, and that justice, however brutal, must be written for all to see. Life in Mesopotamia was not gentle. Punishments were severe. Social classes were rigid. Survival depended on obedience, to the king, to the law, and above all, to the gods. The gods of Mesopotamia were many, and they were feared. Each controlled a force of nature: storms, rivers, fertility, war. They were not loving guardians. They were unpredictable powers who demanded respect. Floods, disease, and famine were seen as signs of divine anger. To live in Mesopotamia was to live under constant uncertainty, praying that the gods would be merciful. Yet fear did not stop innovation. It fueled it. Mesopotamians reshaped the world with their inventions. They created the wheel, transforming transport and warfare. They developed the plow, unlocking the land's full potential. Sailboats cut through river waters, expanding trade and influence. They studied mathematics and astronomy, dividing time into units of 60, an idea that still governs our lives today. They watched the stars, mapped the skies, and tried to understand their place in the universe. But civilization came at a cost. Mesopotamia became a land of conflict. Empires rose on ambition and fell in blood. The Akkadians united the region under the world's first empire. The Babylonians turned it into a center of law and knowledge. The Assyrians built one of the most feared military machines the ancient world had ever known. Each empire believed it would last forever. None of them did. War, rebellion, invasion, and environmental collapse erased cities and shattered dynasties. One by one, the great powers of Mesopotamia fell into silence. Ziggurats crumbled. Canals dried. The land that gave birth to civilization became a battlefield of history. And yet, Mesopotamia never truly died. Its ideas survived. Writing spread across continents. Laws shaped future nations. Cities became the foundation of human life. Even today, every contract, every clock, every city skyline carries echoes of that first experiment between two rivers. Mesopotamia was not just the first civilization. It was humanity's first attempt to understand itself. And in many ways, we are still living inside the world it created.